you guys some tips and perspective on comics, how to improve your panels. And I'd like to start out by showing you guys a page from one of my favorite artists, if not the most favorite artist at the moment, Eduardo Risso. This is 100 Bullets. It's such a great comic book all around. The story is excellent. From issue 1 to 100, they're all great. The art is beautiful, as you could see. Such unique panel work, such unique perspective, such unique characters. But just great book, great story. And then we got the cover artist, Dave Johnson. He also does amazing work. They all work so well together. I think Brian Mazzarella, Eduardo Risso, Patricia Malvo, and Dave Johnson. They all do such great job on this entire story. And just wanted to show you guys this in this episode, or in this issue rather. It has like some of the best scenes, some of the best camera angles. I'm sure there are other ones. Like it's been a minute since I've read all of the issues all over again, which I am. I really do want to revisit them again. It's just I'm always so captivated and inspired by the art, the story itself as well. I get really into it, and it's just going into this cool world that is illustrated so well. And just to show you guys how important it is to vary your panel work in terms of like camera angles, right? And like the very first one right here, you know, just this shot right here. It's such a great shot, and there's exaggerated perspective, you know. It's like this angle coming down from here, and you're getting to see like all the stuff that's behind a bar, but really it's like about these guys duking it out. As you guys have read, it's some adult content. There's definitely a lot of adult content here, so I'll just say that. This is my fair warning. Stories are dark. Yeah, each issue has some pretty dark ideas, but it's interesting. It's very cool, and I'm sure the stuff happens, of course, in reality. You know, it's all based on things that do happen outside of our scope of vision. So it touches up on life as well, and all the different struggles and problems and challenges we face morally as well. The choices that we have to make, all that is included, which is why the story is so great. And just the metaphors that are used to describe, like visually and through dialogue, to describe certain scenes or what's about to come. It's so masterfully done. So you got these two grumpy old men taking jabs at each other at a bar, and as you could see, his work isn't like hyper realistic, you know, like doesn't have all the tiny little details, but there are cool things that I really do enjoy about his work, like just that right there, you know. That's so much fun. That's so cool. It adds to like the griminess of it all. Like these little things are so important to bring it all together, you know, just all that little detail within the glass, the splashing off of the bottle and such, you know, all of these little things add to making this scene so cool. And the same thing could be said here, and I like even like little things like that, just showing you guys ways that you fill up the background. You don't want it to be boring, you don't want it to be flat, and just focus on this dude or these guys, or the main characters or whatnot. You could see like really that this takes up so much of the scene, but despite it being about these two guys taking jabs at each other. So just kind of like, it gives you something fresh to look at. It's not some common angle that you would see. It's not just the front view of like these two guys and just close up of them talking to each other. So that's just one way of making it interesting for the readers to get engaged in the art, not just the story. Not just reading the bubble and then moving on to the next one, just quickly looking through. Just take the time and look and appreciate all that. That's somebody's hand that created that. Then moving on to the next panel. This is also masterfully done, right? Because look at that. There isn't that much detail there. And in fact, it's kind of cut off towards the bottom, right? There isn't at like every single frame and line and perspective that's there. It's pretty flat, but it's in perspective of the scene. You got this right here. You got like this perspective right there. And you got, this building right here that's kind of turning towards this angle. I'm doing my best here with this limited tool. And then you got this perspective here. So despite this being so simple, it's not taking your focus. It's there, it adds to the scene, it adds to the drama. You got these cars back here, also pretty simple. But then you got little details here that make it so much fun. Like this stuff that really bring out the scene. All these little things, and they're fun to draw, and they add character to the building. You got like the grimy little part of like the awning here. The liquor sign is kind of tilted to just show this like worn out, crappy area, not really well taken care of. Also notice that not a lot of detail here, right? He didn't draw every single line, and that's just part of the composition. Just bringing it all together. He's creating this vibe. He's creating this scene, but with just a few lines, masterfully done. Adding these little bit of details to the gate, and this right here. Even this, I think, is important. The shapes, the circular shapes within it, kind of breaks up the lines that you see everywhere on the image, and it adds to it being dynamic. And then you could see even with the bricks here, you didn't draw every single brick, but there's a suggestion, that the rest of them are just like that as well. It's just how it's done as well. It's just the suggestive lines are masterfully done. Then you got like the bottom part of it where he uses, moving on to the next panel, where he uses shadows masterfully, right? Like all that's all black, no detail, but you get an idea that it's like this dim setting. You got flat colors for the stools and the desk, or the table rather. And just by like this alone, the chairs, whoa, that's interesting. The chairs, and having the chairs have this like cool design, that on its own kind of breaks up the solid shapes of the shadows. And this as well. This little detail, dirt right there, that's cool. It also breaks it up. This is like the center focus towards the back, and it also has interesting curves and lines on it. And this is what I mean in terms of like building up your visual library. You want to draw not just faces well, you know, not muscles and all that, but you also want to make the backgrounds interesting in its simple form. You know, would you, if you would have drawn a mirror, would you have cared to actually draw these little things? And there isn't that much detail, it's solid, but it still adds character to something that otherwise would be kind of plain. Adding this little thing right there, that's fun. Makes it more interesting visually, makes it more rich. And notice here as well, things are written down. You know, that's not an important part of the scene. You know, if you're like an average viewer, are you really going to focus on that as much? But it does bring out a vibe. It does bring out this intimate sort of setting, this intimate environment in a sense. And of course, adding this design right here, that's also great. It also breaks up the pattern of like, well, adds a pattern to something otherwise that would be pretty solid in a sense. Same thing over here. So as you could see, like there are these little things, you know, pattern breaking that makes the panel really cool. Very interesting. Like even the stuff in his jacket. It's not drawing every single crevice and every single fold, but just this masterful use of shadows that just create the scene as well. And then looking at his face right here, it's at a distance, but you could tell he's not happy. You know, he's in that like agitating state. He's like antagonizing the other guy about his wife. So even that's pretty cool, right? Like it's not the focal point. She's kind of the focal point, right? Everything else here, it just follows along with what the previous bubble was talking about in the next panel, and you could see, you know, where the joke is going with that. But yeah, and also pay attention to the face, right? It's not heavy in detail, but these little, these tiny little details, the simplicity of like even the nose, not drawing every single part of the nostril, and the simplicity of the eyes as well. They're not simple. It's very, very masterfully done. Like if you see just drawing how every single line can, and every single tiny detail or curve can change an expression completely, you could see how this is masterfully done, because he's able to portray these feelings and emotions and expressions with not crazy amount of detail there, as well as the hair. You know, if you look at that, even like that part right there, look at the lines there. They're complicated lines. They're not simple forms. They're not just swooping quick gestures. There's more curves to them, and that's fun, right? So it's kind of like balancing out a little bit of both. You got simple lines here, very very flat images, or very flat parts of the image, and they're accompanied by, you know, like more complicated lines like that, and like as I was mentioning that as well, and also the hand, like that's beautiful. It's so great. All the little parts of it, you know, where it bends, all these lines right there, the curves to them, that adds more realism to it as well. Just beautiful work. It's excellent. This issue is excellent as well. It's pretty dark. It's terrible stuff that happens to the character. And how that unravels, all of it, it's all great stuff. and every issue that follows and before it as well. I just wanted to bring this up because really this scene right here, well, all of these panels, but that panel is definitely one of my favorites, as well as this one, you know, just the camera angle. And I just wanted to show you guys how important it is in terms of creating and paying attention to the stuff. If you are somebody who is drawing comics, you know, just recognizing how fun you can make your panels be by changing things up, changing the perspective, thinking of interesting angles, you know, that aren't just focused on the characters. And this was just a great example of that, you know, 3 really beautiful panels and 3 very unique ones. They're not the same at all. You know, you got her towards the foreground, them in the background, and even this piece right here further out. They all kind of play an important role, and this as well. Like all these parts combined together. I also notice how you got rectangular shapes, square shapes. Well, rectangular mostly. And then you got some circular shapes. You got that, you got this. You know, you got the coin that she's holding itself. You got the cassettes in the background here. So it's just mixing all that stuff together. You know, all of these elements create masterful panel work. You know, angles, camera angles, varying lines, you know, making all these different lines as well. Shape differences, you're mixing up the shapes. You got circles, you got squares, you got rectangles. All of that creates masterful panel work. So just things to keep in mind, you know, when you are working on stuff like what else can I do to make things more interesting? And it doesn't need to be just this comic, although I highly recommend everybody to read it. It could be other comic books that you like. Just pay attention to them really, and like beyond just the characters themselves, and try to notice these things about them, like we were talking about, like the varying shapes that are in the panel, like what the camera angle is like, and what captivates you about that camera angle. And study it. Take the time to notice all those tiny little bit of details, and you'll see that your own work will improve, and it'll be even more fun for you to work on your stuff, because you're like, oh, maybe I should add more to the background. Let me do a little research and see what else I can find in terms of what I'm drawing. Like if I'm drawing a cabinet, like let me see what kind of cool cabinets are out there and what sort of like little details I could take away from them. It doesn't have to only be from the comic book, but it's just this example shows how, you know, paying attention to all those little things, like I was mentioning, like that and adding that, like all those things make it great, you know, make it more cool and fun. Well, that's enough gushing about 100 bullets, right? Let's jump into panel work. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm definitely going to be showing more stuff in the future. I'll be showing other panels that I really enjoy, talking about them, getting into them, discussing the artwork and stuff. Like this isn't going to be the only one for sure. But I did want to share it and introduce you guys to this comic book. I wanted to share it with as many people as possible for them to see this beautiful work and story. Yeah, and with that said,